system. Um, and so the challenges with mobilizing clergy is that, you know, to establish a strategic partnership with other organizations, if you don't know what that means, then you don't know what to do. For instance, let's say we go into, what's the name of the location, Bain? Okay, let's use that for an example. We go in there together with community, with faith, with the government, and you get into there and you see that the basketball court needs to be fixed. The government is going to take all of their resources and put it into one place. So we're going to take the whole of the government. The government is going to go in there with the human services, sports and recreation. I don't know what they name. I'm just giving you like names. You can tell me what they are. Youth services, unemployment services, garbage collection, repair company, road repair. And if they have the highest crime, we're going to put the money into the highest. So the place that is difficult to fix, we're going to put enough money, just like you want to build another port to build in another cruise ship. Right? You're going to dredge that for $50 million. We just did a $50 million project in the Virgin Islands to create a new harbor. It took like 10 years. We spent $50 or $150 million with federal money to do that work. Okay, that's big money. I want to take half of that and go up to the projects where they don't have a basketball court with lights, don't have a coach. Put that same amount of funding in the place that have the highest crime. That's the only way that you can reduce the crime. So you want a new basketball court, you want lights, you want an after-school program. But I'm going to fund you to take your program to come and help me. The government can't do that. So we're going to fund you to do that. You're going to take all of those children and you're going to bring them to your school. We're going to fund your school so that you can take all those kids from over there, and we're going to pay you, sister, who are a transportation company, to transport them from that location here free. And we're going to give you that contract. I don't know if you have a transportation company, but that's a good one. You write it down, tell them that you want to do that. Then we're going to take your ministry and give them after-school basketball and football. So you got him now coming in with the school. You got the government funding you. You got the nonprofits have all this money coming all over saying, what could we do? Say, okay, I'm going to give you money to fund all of your night watches, folks. And you, the Board of Youth Services, what? Juvenile prison. And so what we're going to do now is that, hey, we're tapping you again. You have a great re-entry program. So everyone who's coming out there, she has a pipeline of 4 groups. That, okay, where you live, before you get on the street, no, you're going to go through a program for 3 months with you that we're going to pay as part of re-entry. And so therefore, you're not just releasing them onto the street, catch a bus and go back to their local community. You are saying we're taking the houses of worship, the faith community, nonprofit organization, those that have businesses. We have 10 jobs that is open. For the 10 most individuals that's causing all the problems in the Bahamas, we're going to hire you at top dollars. That's how you start to create a partnership to have a safe Bahamas. That's why I ask every prime minister when I meet with them, are you serious about reducing gun violence? If you tell me that your budget is only about law enforcement, prison, punishment, jail, bulletproof, new cars, guns, trainings, taking this group from here, taking them all the way to London, and that's what we're saying. What about now sponsoring a group of training for all of it? We should command and say to you, anyone who is receiving money from the Bahamian government that deals with youth services should be here today. And then say to them, tell me what we're giving you $500,000 to have youth services. Tell me, what is your program? And then they got to tell me, how many kids do you have in your program? I have 2. How much you supposed to be? I have 100. We go down the list. I'm the prime minister. Don't ever elect me as a prime minister anyway. And I would say, what are you doing with the funding that we give you? And then you start checking them off. Now what you do then, everyone now, you have to have a list for this young lady that when they leave, they're going to leave from here, and then they're going to go to your care. You're going to work with them. You're going to fund them. We give them an opportunity to survive. We go back to the community. What do they like to do? Soccer fields normally in our communities is run down. So you have a big stadium. I don't know how much money you pay for that big stadium. Lights, camera, action, whether it's football or cricket, I don't know what they do over there, but it's huge. I look at investments. What did Dr. King says? That your budget is a moral document. I know who you are by just watching what you spend your money on. I can tell you what your fetish is. I can tell you what you like. I can tell you what clothes you like to wear based on your budget alone. Just show me your budget and I can tell you exactly who you are. I might not know your name, but I said, man, this guy likes some fine cigars. He loved to do it. So if your government is spending money on those big things, why don't we then take that team who's the national, whatever the case is, and put a program where they are? That's how you start to reduce the violence. It has to be holistic. It cannot be single approach. You must work around with the government in order to do so. We also have to tell the faith leaders that they have to advocate on behalf of services for these type of individuals. Now, it don't even have to be me who's receiving the money. But I know that if I have a safe Bahamas, I'm going to have the opportunity to flourish. Because either you're going to be in here together or you're going to sink together. Because as much as money as you have, and if you're scared to come out of your gated community, what good does it have? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to break and take some questions. I'm going to have Pastor Charles Garber come, and then I want to make sure that we close out at the right time. So let's take some questions right now. The idea of a holistic approach, I'm giving you the fast track thing because I don't want you all to go sleep on me, is that it has to have a holistic approach. You have to have the faith community doing one piece. You have to separate them. Faith community doing one piece. You have city government or government doing one thing, and then you have your nonprofit organizations. I will be in St. Croix next month doing another type of training called nonprofits and faith communities, faith-based community, working with government agencies to it's somewhere, some title that I gave it. But the idea is that I'm pushing the government. The government did sign the bill. They created the first ever Office to Prevent Gun Violence in the Virgin Islands. It's not necessarily working that the way it should be, but there is movement in those areas. And I think that you have to have a holistic approach in order to reduce violence. Yes.
One of our main issues, I believe, is we are so reactive, and it's only when something major happens, you would have people scurrying about in the government in different places to try to make that solution. We had a surge of crime, and then that's when we went into the neighborhoods, we walked the streets, we did this. So it's like, to me, I'm trying to figure out, does it require some catastrophic event to get people to move? And how do you get people to, those who are in different silos, to come out really and say, you know what, it's time? Does it have to have a major tragedy? You know, a school shooting, this and that, for us to move? Or how do we get, especially Caribbean people, to get us to get to that point?
Okay. So here is the thing. This work is not sexy. Okay? And I feel no way with those of you who are here. I never expect a large crowd when I travel to Caribbean Islands. Because the way that we have been taught is that every murder is not created equally. Okay? Every murder is not created equally. Let me explain that. When America started to shift, so we as clergy came together to start Clergy for Safe Cities. Because during the year of George Floyd, remember George Floyd in America during COVID, he got killed by a police officer? We wanted our voice to be heard on a lot of issues, so we formed this group. So we got together and we had 10, if you look in your booklet, you'll see the founding members from all over the U.S. Call them together and say, listen, we need to do something. We need our voices to be heard about the violence that we have in America, because gun violence spiked up. So we've been doing this work for 15 years. And when you had the mass shooting in Parkland, when they killed these little white, um, there was some white students in the school, our heart broke for that. They raised $25 million. It was on a Friday or Saturday. By Monday morning, and started a national movement in one day. All of the pastors here, we've been doing this work for 20 years, and we have never yet to receive funding from one rich person for the work that we have done up to a day like today. All violence is not created equally. Okay, let me give you another example. Unfortunately, if you have someone of prominence in the Bahamas whose son get killed, they will find that person, or they will find a person, and they will close that case, and that case will never be unsolved. Let me back up. Every murder is not created equally. Listen to what I'm saying. My point is, we respond to the value of life that we give to the person that is killed. Okay, let me back up one more time. So I came to the airport yesterday, and I waited for like maybe 40 minutes to get through the line because we had like 4 or 5 planes at the same time, right? The question I asked you earlier, what is your murder rate? About 115 people who die a year, right? In the Bahamas. Is that correct? About that. Okay. If you have 100 and let's say 100 tourists who is killed every year, would that sustain itself? It will never happen in no Caribbean island. So my larger point is, the only way that we can push the narrative forward is that the faith moral voices have to push the conscience of our faith leaders, of our political leaders. That's why we need the faith. That's why this is faith-led. People talk about, well, how does clergy help with preventing gun violence? That question alone says that they don't understand the totality of it. So if you're coming to my church and you're coming to this community and you're the prime minister, I have to talk to you about consciously pushing you to understand that all of these lives that we see, they're valued. So if I have now 50 clergy in the Bahamas who get up every single day and say, listen, we are forming a group. And our group is going to do one thing and one thing alone. We're going to push our country to get safe. And every person who comes to your pulpit and who comes to all of your big conferences, and you have all these people flying in, doing all this stuff, you got to provide security for them. You got to do all this stuff. If you come together and say, no, as a nation, we can do better. That the person who got killed the other day, young man who got killed, the prime minister should go see the family, stand on the street and say, you know what? We can't allow this to happen. Okay, that's a good question. He said, what is the person who's a criminal? Okay. Now, let's talk about that a little bit. That's a good question. Now, sometimes we have to remember that our ministry is not to the person that's dead. They're dead. Psychologically, let's frame this out a little bit more, because the narrative that we have over and over again is why we don't do what we have to do, because all murders are not created equally. So if you put a value of your son, he was a bad man. You get caught with a gun and the police shoot him. There's 2 things that you can do. Me, as clergy, we can go, we can stand in the same place and say, this is unfortunate. This should have never happened. That's why we need the services for our community, so that we don't get ourselves in this area again. You can say that. You're still righteous, you're still right on target, and you're still identifying the fact that this was unfortunate. Or you can say, we don't want to go there because he was a murderer. He was bad. It's all about how much value you put to the life of an individual is how your government is going to respond. as a faith advisor to the mayor of New York City, when we have these murders, I always said to him that these young people who are being killed, we can't go to every single thing. But I said that our office have to be sensitive to every murder. Everyone. So now, if a big man get killed, the whole island shut down. Can't go, can't move. Mayhem in the place. We're looking for this person. So what do? We call together the clergy and say every single day, the lives of these young people matter to us. We're going to fight so that we can have the resources. And sure, the government needs to know the way. We have to be the moral compass for our communities. We have to challenge them that you can't only spend $50 million budget on the police department. What about all of the services? What about nonprofit organization? What about you who has a school? Look at all of these beautiful children today. That is the best prevention service that you can ask for. Those beautiful kids. I want them to even know that you have a school here and the impact that has been made. That's why public safety is a shared responsibility. Everywhere, in the Bahamas, Virgin Islands, the USA, everywhere. If we don't, I tell pastors all the time that your youth ministry is one of the best forms of gun violence prevention in America. Because I don't have to worry about your kids. You're taking care of them. I'm worried about the other ones over there. So let's start to reframe and don't put a value of life because that person was in a gang. Therefore, we're not going to see about them because we feel that they were bad. You can't do it. You can still stand there with that mother because he's dead. What about the person that's alive? And it's not your time to say, well, he was bad, he was good. That's not our business. Our business is that we are here today and we shouldn't be here. It's an unfortunate situation and we have to do more. You're not ready for that, right? Not yet? You ready? Let me don't get you in trouble, but I live in tomorrow, so yeah, and then you.
I think it's unfortunate because I think there's a lack of empathy from the church. Because when you look at how much money the church invests in the youth, I mean, I'm talking for the Haitian community. I mean, going around and see, it's like the youth is insignificant. No money will be invested in youth program to keep them off the street. Based on what I'm hearing from you, it seems like the church should play a major role as far as keeping our youth in shape, setting their mind. So, but in all fairness, I think the church, there's a lack of empathy from the church to go out and get this going.
Statesmen to navigate the terrain. Okay, I didn't just came to this place. I had to learn, and we had to learn how to politically speak, but also to how to deal with media, and just the idea of we do these mock training as to what do you say when you reach into a situation where the person quote unquote is a gang member. You have to know how to navigate. But every life for you should be, because if you think about this, the same bad guy who you talk about gets wheeling hair and you do a sermon. Have any church rejected any funeral? No. Everybody who dies somehow gets a funeral everywhere that I go. A pastor goes over them, and even if they say, Hail Mary, Mother of God, full of grace, they get something. Because our Bible tells us that the body goes to the grave, the spirit goes back to God. That's our ministry. Our ministry is not to try to put them from purgatory into limbo or pay you to make them a righteous saint. Now, in that, even preaching a sermon on gun violence, pastors, we have to know how to speak about. I went to a funeral service, and this guy was preaching a sermon for a young man who was killed. He never mentioned the word gun violence or gun once in a sermon. He just preached a sermon. And you would never believe that this person is dead. The first thing that you have to do is acknowledge that the person died by gun in the sermon. The second thing is, this is the only time that you, as a pastor, have the opportunity to speak to as many young people from his group in your church then. I'm not worried. My first 5 minutes is to the family. You're grieving. Lord bless you. We're praying with you. And after that, unfortunately, I'm done. I'm going to the living. So the first row, my first sermon is for the first row. Then the next 20 minutes is everybody from the second row and those who are outside smoking, drinking. No, that's a whole nother training. Yeah. Whole nother, whole.
I jot down some things that you said is very inspiring, very encouraging. I'm chairman of the National Neighborhood Watch Council here in the Bahamas. And I think one of the main concerns in our country is that we don't fully we don't understand that crime is everyone's business. Crime doesn't care whether you live in the east, west, north, or south. Whether you're black, you're white, in between. Whether you're Baptist, Anglican, it doesn't matter. Crime, it don't even care about your age. It doesn't care about your gender. The point is, we have to understand that crime affects everyone, whether directly or indirectly. And until we get to a point in our country to say that enough is enough, we have to understand that we are a part of the problem. Why? Because too many times we have mothers who have sons and daughters bringing home stuff. They're not working, but then the parents, they benefit from what their child or son or daughter is bringing home who are not working. And the only time we cry and holler and scream is when they either they're incarcerated, they're locked up, or dead. That's when we speak out. Too many of us are a part of the problem in our country. And until we get to that point where we ought to be our brothers and sisters keepers in this country, we continue going down and down. We have almost 170 neighborhood watch groups in the Bahamas. The question is, how many residents are a part of the neighborhood watch group who wants to see change, who are a part of the growth, the development into their community? How many of us observe and report, see crime happening, but don't report it because it don't affect us yet?
Let's respond to the equation of good kid, bad kid who died, okay? And I want to set this to again, and I do understand your point, Mr. Fitzgerald. And I think we have a question. Sister Tamika, you wanted to ask a question? You had your hand raised? Okay. I want to say to you is that a mother is going to love the child even though that they are criminal. I can't expect, if God forbid my child would do something, I want to love the child. And I don't think that's the problem to me here or anywhere else. I think the problem becomes when we don't value the life of even the child that was good. It's not the one that's bad, because we can always go to that. is what about the young person who was just in a group and they get killed? Every person, the 100 people who got killed in the Bahamas last year, every single one of them could not be bad. So if you lump them into the fact, okay, here's another thing that I want to suggest to you. Now, this is all like philosophy type of stuff within gun violence. You know, they you are victimized and criminalized because you get killed by gun violence in all black and brown communities for the most part, and even in the white communities. That's why there's a term that I don't use in America. It's called black on black crime. People commit crime where they live. The Times report says that now in America, every 10 blocks radius in America, there is an incident of gun violence for the first time in the history of America. What does that mean? It means to say that gun violence is reaching and creeping to everyone. Okay? So what I would recommend is that let's just put them in a lump sum that says that here are the conditions that is created to create violence that young people who unfortunately is in this proximity of education, economics, upbringing, is now find victim of gun violence. Let us respond to everyone who have been killed in one way, with love, compassion, and care, regardless of how they die, because what's going to happen is that everyone will be placed into a situation where their life is not valued. So that's what we're finding today. So let the mother say that the son is good. Somebody have to say that. Let them say that. That's their child. However, we then can't say, well, we're not messing with that particular death because he was bad. We're not going there because he's dead, unfortunately. You know, may the Lord, may he rest in peace. We are saying, what was the condition that he found himself in? We want to say that we should never find ourselves there. So no matter what debt that you have, the church should still have a voice in everyone, in everything. If we don't do that, then we put in value on people's lives that we shouldn't do. What does it look like if every shooting from now until next year, that you all respond together to every shooting? Bahamas will look so different. All right.
Good morning. During the presentation, and Mr. Fitzgerald and I, we are from the same community, and we are in the same neighborhood watch, and it always amazes me when we meet and we have meetings on the park. It's just a few of us, and persons do not come out of their homes to be a part of what's happening. I work in this community. I work right at AF Adley School. And I'm just so overwhelmed listening to what's going on. I work with the youth group in the church. And I am seeing in my church that the number as it relates to children coming to church, it has decreased. It's a problem. I was just helping my son with his coursework. And the topic that they're looking at for the religious studies coursework is social problems. What is the role of the church? How does the church contribute to these social issues? And he has this article with Adriel Moxie. That's a little girl who got killed last year, November, by Anatole. And just listening to what the speaker is saying, we are talking about the gun aspect, but what do we do before that young man takes a gun? What do we do? Because it's like, there's just so much that needs to be done. It's so overwhelming. We had fun day on Tuesday, and I walked on the corridor. I saw, this is students in junior school. a little boy handed something to another young man. I saw when he passed something to him. I stopped right in front of them. Said, hand it to me, whatever it was. He showed me his hand, empty, nothing. Okay? But maybe the Holy Spirit prompted me. I said to him, whatever you all are doing, remember, you have to be careful. You're a young man, don't get yourself caught up. Believe me, within 1 hour, about 15 of these boys were in the principal's office. They had marijuana at the fun day. And now he's saying, oh, miss, speak to her for me and tell her you told me to not touch it. But I said, when I asked you what you had in your hand, you showed me your hand empty. I said, that's dishonest. I have a problem with that. I said, I can't speak for you. And honestly, I told them, let the police carry him. That's what I said. Because I was trying to prevent them from this, but yet still they're so deceptive. So I'm just listening, but I am on board. I want to see us, nip this, but it's a lot. And the breakdown is there all around. We have our student Christian movement, and I only have 3 children out of a school of almost 1,000 who comes religiously. So it's a lot.
It is.
And another thing, Pastor,
Go ahead.
I was just, even in the coursework last night as we were reviewing, I'm thinking that even as a church, we need to have like a more of an open door policy and being out there in the community. Yes? Persons within the church, we work, we have our families, we have so much to do, and everyone is just trying to make ends meet. And that is why I think some persons, they can't be bothered or to take on the stress. You look in the room, a lot of persons who are mature people, they have the passion and the vision. And the younger persons, oh, they feel so invincible. They don't care if it happens to me. I'm good. They don't. That toughness. No, but I feel overwhelmed. I really do.
So, just so you know, we're here with you, right? You have one of the things that this creates, that's why this paper is so important, because it gives you can't do this work alone. It gives you an accountability partner. And I want you to really consider this today before we leave, that you check in with that person. It helps you along the way. We'll talk about this just before we close again. Let me say this to you. I think for us is that my concern is not about illegal guns. I want to preference this by saying, yes, I'm concerned about illegal guns. Our work is beyond the gun. It's about the heart. Here's what I'm saying. I want that we are so effective that even if a young person have a gun, they wouldn't use it. That's our work. We're into hard work now, okay? Let the police, we're not going to spend a minute talking about illegal guns here. It's not our concern. The way the guns are coming in is in high, we can't deal with that. We're not running down people bringing guns in here. They have more money, they're well-oiled, they have more people on their payroll. We are not going to do that. Here's what I say to people when they say, you can't come to like a community, Caribbean island, and talk about corruption. So I don't talk about corruption. You know what I talk about? Have the clergy be so empowered that when they see that we're concerned about our young people, they will change their habits. That's how you get away with corruption. So I'm not talking about corruption, and I'm not talking about illegal guns. Let's work with the young people that even if they have a gun at home, that they wouldn't use it. Because don't get carried away, and we are overwhelmed is because we're taking on the totality of the gun violence problem. All that shit that you're saying, that's too much for you to carry. So I'm not going to burden the few of us in here with what government support. They just spend all that money for police cars and boats and all that stuff and cameras. Let them go find it. So if you're not finding it, then what is going on? You ask them that. That's not our business. You take care of that. What we want to take care of is what we can take care of. Okay. Why is there guns coming into our country? We're not dealing with corruption. Let whoever advocate talk about that. We are saying what we do know is that we want the gun violence to stop. And let the conscience beat them if they have one. And we pray that that is going to beat it. So when they come into our session, trust me, that word is coming on hot and heavy. We speak into the heart. You know, we're pricking the heart that they will feel uncomfortable knowing that there could be more to be done. So don't take on all that, my sister. All right? Let's deal with the hard work. Leave the guns to the people who wants to have all these equipment to find guns. We're going to deal with the heart. And we're going to say, you know what? They're smoking marijuana and all that stuff, that we can't deal with that. There's a lot of ganja going around. So we're going to say to them, be respectful. If you come in here, here is the rules, and then that's your work. Okay? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
As the lead person for the juveniles at the prison, when I have conversations with my young men come in, one of the first things I tell them, or when we're having our conversation, is before you make your first move, think about your end results. Because what I have assessed over the past few years is that young people do what they have to do without thinking about the consequence. That is why they're so involved in so many crimes that is going on, because they don't really think about, if I do this, this would be my end result. And I'm in the era right now where I'm dealing with parents, because I have young people between the ages of 15 to 18 sitting down, waiting on murder, attempted robbery, gun charges. When they come into the facility, I look at them as babies, as children. So from my perspective, you live with a parent or a guardian. You're a child. I'm not looking at you because you didn't grow yourself up. You didn't just turn 15, 16, pick up a gun, did what you did. During the process of childhood, growing up, what were you exposed to? Did you go to church? What were the standards in the home? What was taught? What were the principles that you were guided by to reach this point? So my focus has been, parents, what are you doing? What are we doing as parents? Yes, that's your child. So my thing is, we need to be more accountable and know more about what our children are doing before it gets to the point where they reach to me, and now we have to find solutions and intervention after the fact. I'm a person all about prevention before the incident happens, simply because when they get themselves into these trouble, they now have to worry about who's coming back after whatever was done and wondering if they can have a normal life afterwards. You know, a lot of my young men, I ask them, do you go to church? A lot of them say, I have negative feelings about church. They say the church people look at them different. They don't treat them, or they don't speak to them the way, they just feel awkward in the church. I guess because the church expect them to look a certain way. But we have to now realize that even though some of these young men look a certain way, man, they are some of the most intelligent young people you could sit down and have a conversation with. So that has been one of my things. And praying, I'm talking about praying. You have a young man sitting down there for murder, and you ask him to say a prayer, and he prayed better than some pastors, out there. So I said that to say all is not lost when they find themselves in the situation, or even end up getting killed or incarcerated, sentenced for some time in these situations. It's just that we look at the smaller picture, but we have to look at the bigger picture from whence they came. What were they exposed to? What other path were they given to walk other than the one they came up? So when we take all of that into consideration, we can kind of start to understand why and how this child got into this situation. So it helps us to be a little more empathetic, and then we can start using their situations to make preventative measures. This happened this way. So if we can catch this one by putting this in place, he wouldn't have to end up, or she wouldn't have to end up in this situation. So everything we use, we try to use it as something that we can learn from, and we can put measures in place, uh, put some kind of teaching, some type of workshop seminars, something in place so that we can educate both parents and young people to make them better, and so that we wouldn't have them following in the steps of what had happened before. You know, we use those kind of measures, and then we can have a safer community. If we save one, we would have done a lot. But people do not care when it is not their child. That is my biggest problem. I always tell them it is going to be that child you neglected that rob, kill, steal, God forbid, from your good child. So if we know that a parent is struggling, it will not kill us if we have it to give that child something to eat, to give that child a ride to school, to do something that will help steer that child in a more positive direction. But sometimes we just turn a blind eye, and that is why the country gets is in the state it is in, because we just don't care.
I'm gonna let Dr. Charles respond to that in a fuller way about the church role later today. That's his particular piece, and that's a good question. And he's going to challenge the pastors about the moral imperative of dealing with this from a spiritual standpoint, and especially from the pulpit. So that's a great question, but that will be level out. Go ahead.
Well, I'll delve into that later on, but just wanted to reflect on something you shared, Pastor Monroe, and what I was hearing in the room is we were reflecting on Dr. King and his legacy. And one of those moments, I don't know if you remember, reflecting history, when those 4 young girls were killed in Alabama. Dr. King came and was invited to give the eulogy. When he came and gave the eulogy, he stood at the pulpit and said, "I'm not here to ask who killed these young girls. I'm here to ask what killed these young girls." And I think that's the question that we're going to have to continue to reflect on, even as we are doing this work in regards to the issue and challenge of gun violence, is not who, but what. What are the systems? What are the loopholes? What are the areas that we did not see that caused things to be the way that they are? It's not here by accident. It's, understood and recognized by systematic structures that have allowed young people to get into this development and framework. And now we're trying to say, what is our call? What is our role to be able to do this? I think Pastor Nathan had a reflection, but I just wanted to lift that up from that.
So much for that. I have 2 points that were comments and questions. First comment came from Jason Cooper. He asked the question this morning, how exactly are you supposed to prevent gun violence? But I've realized his question was based upon the idea that it's unpreventable, because he listed several ways that guns come into the country. And as you said, something I think profound, and I think I'm going to have to try to get that clip out to the public, because you said we're dealing with the heart. We're not dealing with that issue. And I think that right there shifts the whole focus on what we're doing here, because honestly, illegal guns is unpreventable getting into this country. You can't stop it. And that is the reality. And I think addressing it like that, I think that's why a lot of people did not show up, because they see this gun violence as something unpreventable.
Not only that, they're seeing it because they're seeing it that way because they've never heard this yet.
Yeah, right. That's true.
So when you talk about, when you talk about clergy and gun violence or community violence prevention, they're pigeonholing us into what we're going to say. We're not here to talk about illegal guns, corruption, murders in that sense. We're here to talk about what is our role in the prevention of this, and how do we use the resources that we have, and how do we push. You see, the faith leaders is the moral compass for Bahamas. Okay? So our voice have to now push, okay, the leaders to be real about dealing with this. So we all have our role, but if we think that you are coming here, that I'm going to run down how guns are coming and who guns are, we don't have the apparatus to deal with that. We can deal with all of the other things. So I would ask you one day, my dear sister, how do we have to look at prison ministry. My prison ministry is outside, not inside the prison. Some people's prison ministry is that they want to be in the prison. That's good. You know, it's good stuff. They want to go in, they want to do the prayers. That's good prison ministry. But we also have to tell our leaders, prison ministry starts here. Prison ministry is also when they are released from prison so that they don't get back into prison. Prison ministry is not just to come to you in there to say, let's do a Hail Mary prayer. That person have to be able to decide, okay, how am I going to survive? You know, I got to be protective. And sometimes these prisoners, they got to actually beat up a few people so people leave them alone. So however I tell them, whatever you got to do to survive in here, you do it. Because guess what? I'm leaving tonight, going back out the door. So I can't say, you know what, read a couple of scriptures. No, whatever you got to do to survive, you survive, because this world in here is different. So you should have a list of 10 places and 10 pastors that you can call and leaders that you can call to be real with those individuals. You have that list? We're going to give you some today, okay? Before you leave here. Go ahead.
We have some.
One is dead? You didn't remember the question. Welcome to those of you just come. Not sure your name or where you are, but we'll get that from you.
Culture
Oh, good. Yes, we.
of this area.
Okay, good. Lovely. Amen. All right.
Well,
So we'll reset for them. What do you want to do, Pastor? Questions? Okay, we have some questions. Okay, so here it is that we're saying to create a safe Bahamas, not safer, a safe Bahamas. The only way that you can do that is through partnerships. If your government is spending money only on police, that is not the key, and that is not how you get to safety. You can never arrest your way out of what we're in here today. Can't do that. That's why major cities, even in America, is moving away from the approach only of enforcement. Okay? So our budget has to reflect the mere fact that we know that public safety is a shared responsibility, and the Minister of Sports and the MP, the Youth, Sports and Culture, we are going to give them the scenario in which we just said, so that they now have this, they're on the same level in terms of what we're talking about, so they understand where we are. So you have a question?
We had a question online. Mandel Miller asked, from a national policy standpoint, how can the church and government create policy to address the elimination of gun violence, and are there any examples that exist?
Yes, thank you for that question, Andre. So that's very important. That's why we are using partnerships. If you are building a house not only the framers that you're going to need to build a house. Am I correct? Have you ever built a house before and you only hire a framer? Can't work. So what we're seeing right now is that overall index crime, and you remember what I said to you before, if you have a safer America, you're going to have a safer Bahamas and the Caribbean region. Safe. Thank you so much. Safe. Safe. That's good. That's good. If you have a safe America, you'll have a safe Bahamas and the Caribbean region. So every prime minister that I'm speaking to, as I'm going to them, I'm saying to them that, listen, the way that you deal with that is that it must be a holistic approach. We can't put all of our budget into just police work, whereas the preventative measure has to be you. You have a watch. You have a youth program. You have a church with a school. This person has an after-school program. This young lady has a sewing and a crochet program. The lady behind her has a cooking program. The national interest of the Bahamas is to make sure that we are funding those groups, to send people to them, to create a net, a security net or a safety net. Why do you think that the Bahamas was safe and when I grew up in the Virgin Islands was safe before? They used to have all that stuff. To get to where we are today, you have to look back and see, when did we start having the crimes? And when America becomes safe, we're going to be safe because there's less guns are going to be coming. Criminals is going to continue to reduce. And then when they do the time, 20 years in prison, they send them back to the Bahamas, to the Virgin Islands, they send them back to Dominica, they send them back to Jamaica, Mexico. They're coming as hardcore criminals for the past 20 years that they served their time. They're dropped right here, and then you say, oh my goodness, this person was, deported back to our islands. That's why in CARICOM, they're working to be like, okay, what is this new policy is going to be like, in the Trump administration? The only way that that could be done is that there needs to be partnership. So we go again to the example that we use. How do you use state leaders right now in the Bahamas when there's a crime? How is that being done? Crime happened. You have 100+ crime in the Bahamas every year. How does the state leaders activated? Who activates you? What is the direct, immediate response after someone is killed? What is the response 3 months later? What happens to the parents of the person who gets killed? What support services do they have? What is done in the community in which the person is killed? Does the city, the government goes back into that area and say, okay, here's why that person have died. Well, there is no lights. There is no sports. The soccer field needs to be taken care of. How are we moving resources into the places that have the most crime? How is that being done? How is that being done? Yeah, we would love we would love that. That's going to help us create our plan. Yeah, how do you how do you engage or the government engage the faith leaders now as we speak?
Pastors.
Yeah, pastors, monks, imams, I'm not sure, all the religion that you have here in the Bahamas.
Well, the Ministry of National Security have many boards that pastors sit on. Rehabilitation board, they sit on the board of the prison rehabilitation, on urban renewal board, which the urban renewal organization try to go in the inner city and to try to provide the necessary aspects that young people need so that you could divert them from the life of crime. How effective that is also, I don't think in the Bahamas has anything to do with the funding, because the funding is there. It's the matter of leaders who have the ability to attract the young people into their organization. Sometimes you have to look at not just having police officers as the lead, because they look at that as enforcement, and finding other persons like pastors and mentors and coaches who has the ability to attract these individuals. Now that's the blueprint, and we're trying our best to ensure that that comes to tuition. But again, as you said, it's a holistic approach. And it's not only the Minister of National Security who's responsible for crime, it's social service, because their social background and the environment that people live that causes them to go to life of crime. Got to look at the immigration policies. because there's a lot of stateless people in the Bahamas who also goes to the life of crime because they are stateless and they have no say in the country and they can't work. So you have to look at bringing all of those ministries together with the holistic approach, along with the urban renewal, and then we will find ourselves more focused on the diversion of crime than fighting crime. No one is going to stop fighting crime, no country. Crime is always going to be here. What we need to do is reduce the amount of crime we fighting, and that's by placing more focus on preventative measures.
Yeah, good. Did you pick up, thank you so much for that. Well thought out response. I'm not sure if you're running for prime minister, I don't know your position, but that was a good response. Okay. However, let's pick up on some of the things that we talked about today in the philosophy of how we deal with gun violence. He said some good things in there. He said about funding is not the problem. Well, we have to stop right there. We have to break that down. Funding is never a problem altogether. Normally in Caribbean islands, and even in the States, in New York City. We just did $400 million of funding for urban communities, okay? Black and brown communities. $400 million on gun violence prevention in New York City. 400 million, that's nearly $500 million. Okay? Funding is not the problem. It's the distribution of the funding of where it should go. So don't fight with the government about funding. They will tell you we have funded individuals. Okay, remember what I said to you today? Where is that person that we given $100,000 to for youth reentry program? Where is that person that we given $500,000 to for that youth soccer team? The people with the most funding attend less public meetings. Let me go back. I'm not talking about the Bahamas now, I'm talking about New York. Why? Because if the government is giving you $4 million, you're busy running around, you won't come to this. If you're in here right now and the government, you have a program, the government is funding you right now. Anybody have a program in the Bahamas that the government is funded in here right now? Well, we can't really say that that's not fair to the government because we're missing a lot of people. But let's say you go to another meeting and you ask them, okay, part of our plan, clergy, to help create a safe Bahamas, because we want the government to take credit for having a safe Bahamas on the work that you're going to do. They could take the credit. We want them to take the credit because they see the light. But let's say you go to a major meeting and sit down with a piece of paper and a book. And you cross your leg and you say, this ministry, this group, you're receiving $100,000 from the government for this. What is it that you're doing and what is your program? Could we get a one-pager that says, what is it that you're doing? And put that in one book, like we did. Put that in one book, right? And put all of the services for youth development that is being funded. All of the services for reentry program. And you meet with these individuals every month in the Bahamas. You do that for 1 year, that's 12 meetings. And every time that there is a shooting, which I wanted you to respond to, how do you engage the faith leaders, is that we want to help cities and state use us properly. As a faith leader before, what they used to call us for is that if there's a major murder, we would do the prayers, we would do the prayer vigil, and we'll do the funeral services. No, we testifying before Congress. No, we testifying before the budget. How does the budget supposed to look? That's our role now. We are the voices that says, no, if a church has a youth program, wants to develop affordable housing, and want to do senior citizen home or have a senior youth program, Why is it that we're not the ones being funded for it? So that's what we're saying is, no, fund us to do that work. Then the narrative changes, and that's how they could use the faith leaders in a better way. Once you can have a holistic approach, that is the only way that violence goes down in any. Look at what country has the least crime right now in the world. Let's go visit them. See what they're doing. What are they doing? How are they funding their programs? It's the very same way. But if we don't value the life of the young men, like I asked the question, when I came in yesterday, I was on the immigration line coming in, and there was like 100 planes. I'm overexaggerating. There was a lot of people. I saw a lot of Europeans. I know they're from America or what have you. Line up coming into the Bahamas. And my question that I asked you 3 times already, if 100 tourists was killed in the Bahamas for last year, do you think that that would be sustainable? If I go back to my home country in the Virgin Islands, and I talk to Governor Bryan and I say, Governor, if we allow 50 tourists to be killed, I guarantee you that that will never happen on St. Thomas, on the Virgin Islands. That will never happen in the Bahamas. It will not happen in St. Lucia. It will not happen in Trinidad. It will not happen in Grenada. They will shut everything down because you are not going to kill tourists coming into our island. Wouldn't. So what do we do? The question that I ask again is that how do the city, how do the government use you, activate the faith community when there's a shooting, when there's a crime? How do you activate them? How do we together, all of our nonprofit organizations, meet with them, and how do we support the family? What is it? Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Everything starts within the home. If I'm a
Sure.
parent and I'm not disciplining my kids and allowing them to do what they want to do, they then move in the community with that behavior that is negative. That behavior then impacts the community, which further impacts the country at large, the nation. So again, I start with the family, and then the pastors, I would not say the faith base as you call it, pastors have an obligation to ensure that they keep the family together within their church and find a way to get out the 4 walls and go into communities and try and reach the people. It cannot be a sole obligation of the government, of any government, to try and save a nation. It has to be a collaboration, and I believe that pastors needs to do much more and go back in the streets and bring
Okay.
those young men and women
Okay.
within the halls.
Stick a pin right there. I am going to allow the pastors, based on our conversation now, to decide their role. I want the government to stay on their role to do what government is supposed to do. And I want nonprofit, that's what we said in the beginning. And I want nonprofits to be in their bucket to what they needs to do. And that's why we're changing even the way that we discuss this. Because I can come to a meeting and you could say just that. Well, you're supposed to be doing this and you should be doing this. You came to me and you told me, you know what? You're changing the way that you think about this, because what we thought was we have to be worrying about how guns get into the island. That's not our concern as pastors. Our concern is about the hard work. Our concern is meeting those young men where they are and let the government decide if they want guns to continue to come into the country. That's on you. So you have to tell them, we're not going to deal with that. What we're going to deal with is young people and how we are going to resource those individuals and the programs that we run. You have a lot of land here. I'm sure that you could develop on here, right? Does the government have a program for development in the island? Okay. You should go to them now and say, listen, I have a plan to have a safe Bahamas. I would like to partner with the government. I have land, you don't have to pay for it, to build affordable housing for people who are making this amount of money. Let them tell you what they want to do. You sure have. There's a lot of tourists that I saw coming in. So that's what we are saying because you have to shift the whole paradigm to create a safe Bahamas or a safe Virgin Islands or a safe St. Lucia or a safe Belize, a safe New York. So right now in New York, as a faith advisor to the mayor of New York City, one of the things that we're working on is that we just passed a bill that gives more flexibility. We're the only city that I think that you can sell your air rights. We give you more flexibility to sell your air rights to a further area. So like if you are here and you own Faith Land, everything, because we're building going up, you can sell your air rights for $50 million for a developer to come and build. That's just for the faith-based community. That's the ecosystem that we're talking about to create a safety net, because to have a safe community, you need housing. You need good healthcare facilities. We're not just dealing with one thing. So in the faith community, as clergy, as leaders, as pastors, we then have to see how we should be talking. Because if you go to a meeting and somebody say, here's what you're supposed to be doing and what you're not supposed to be doing, I can show that to you all day. Because take, for instance, at my church, we spend 3 hours with our students every Saturday. Then they leave and they go home. They spend how many hours in schools? Does the school have a curriculum that deals with gun violence, gangs, crews, what have you, that is part of your curriculum that the Department of Education or the Ministry of Education puts within that particular school because there's a trend that they're seeing on that? That's something that we should be asking for. So the advocacy role too as well in the holistic approach has to go beyond the fact that we have guns coming in. Don't get bogged down with that, because you will never win the argument. There'll be guns coming all the time. There'll be people, unfortunately, that's being shot, yes, but we believe that Bahamas can exist without violence. As clergy, you have to be saying that. You have to preach that. You have to believe that. You have to work until Jesus comes and say that we can exist without violence. When we say we can exist without violence, I'm not saying that all violence will cease. But you see the madness that's going on? That needs to stop. There is no reason that young people should be being killed in a country that is as beautiful as this, and the Virgin Islands, and St. Lucia, and Grenada, and St. Vincent. Shouldn't be, because our culture doesn't lend to that. We don't have any gun manufacturers on the islands. We don't produce ammunitions here. We're not a violent society. We're not the creator of hip hop. We're the creator of calypso, reggae. We have not created anything violent in the world. We haven't given the world anything violent from the Caribbean.
Pastor Gill, could you share about a little bit? I may have missed it. I think it would be good to reinforce it, how the 67 Precinct Council God Squad came about, and that our precinct was once the #1 for crime, and it's now the safest. I think that will pull in a lot of what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the places that you have violence in America and in New York City was the same for 30 years. It's the place where you have the most people who was going upstate in the prison, which we call the $1 million block. In other words, it says that the people who was committing all the crime that they were putting in jail came from 1 or 2 zip codes in New York City. Now, if you know that all of your shooters are coming out of 2 communities. Come on, man. 2 communities. Why would I spend $100 million of gun violence prevention in a community that's already safe and then give the community that I know you have in most of the shooters come in, and I'm only going to give them $5 million? let's, come on now. Let's critically think about this. As preachers, we're not politicians. Our job is to push. Because if you can invest in a marina, dredge a new waterfront, I'm talking about the Virgin Islands now, where I'm from, not Bahamas. If you can dredge for a new cruise ship to take another one in Crown Bay, if you can build a new hotel for $150 million and give them tax credit, company that comes in with a tax credit, if I'm giving you a tax credit, at least you should hire the people from the same community that has all of the shooting, you should hire from that community, right? We agree. Okay, this is gun violence reduction. This is me saying to the government, Governor, I mean, come on, we have to have 10 jobs for these 10 names of people. These are the shooters. They want to work, they say, but we need a job. They don't get to stand in the line. Somebody in the Department of Labor give them the direct number. They get through. They say, what is your name? Okay, you're Harry. Okay, we know Harry's coming. Harry, you have 3 jobs to pick from. No interview, no skills. You're going to work. And I'm going to put you to work because you're coming from a community and you are leading in a trend that I know. There is something in New York City that's called a lookbook. And a lookbook is when we go to the precinct, they say to me, here are the 10 people that we think that either is going to die, be in jail, or get shot, be in jail, or this is the next person who's going to lead again. It's called a lookbook. So here it is that I'm going through this lookbook and I'm looking at all the names. And I'm saying to myself, okay, if you know, your government know, the top 10 people in the Bahamas that's causing 90% of the crime, what should we be doing? You want a job? Whatever job that you want, as long as you're going to stop your thing, you have that job. Not 3 and 4 job interviews, none. We're going to give you work. Oh, you want to be in sports department? All right, to be a painter, you have that job. Who's coming on Tuesday? I'm having 10 jobs for those individuals. Give it 1 year, and the Bahamas will change and drop in crime by at least 80%. But let me leave you with this. But what is the issue? You have the money, he said, right? It's not a budget issue. You have the organizations, and you have the Prime Minister who gave you a 5-point plan that we just read. The first thing on the 5-point plan for your Prime Minister, which I give him all the credit for, is prevention. Is that right? We read that today, this morning, correct? You all didn't even know about your 5-point plan. Now, in the 5-point plan, you have prevention, you have punishment, you have rehabilitation. Look at what money is being spent in every category. When I get back to New York tomorrow, email me and tell me what is the dollar amount. Put it on a board like this, you see the vision, and make it plain, and come back to me and start to tell me now, how do you dissect how a government looks at their plan and where the investment goes? I'm speaking a little tough on y'all? Huh? I said the same thing to the mayor. I just spoke to Governor Bryant from St. Virgin Islands. I'm going back there. That's where I'm born. That's where I'm from. They know my work. We passed the first Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Governor Bryant signed it into law. And I had a very difficult time in getting that law passed by the same politician who said that they're concerned about Virgin Islanders being killed. It was the last bill that was signed the last night at 12 midnight. They didn't want to sign that bill. Google it. Put Guilford Monroe's, the Office of Prevention of Gun Violence in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Our job is to make sure that we can push the consciousness of our community leaders, of our parents. Pastor Gabbard is going to talk about. Now, the church is not getting away. Today's how we use partnership. Pastor Charles is going to touch up the pastors today. So if you're a pastor and you don't want to get touched up, don't come tonight. He's going to deal with that tonight because, as the PM says, the MP says that we have our role. So that's tonight. But today is using partnerships to create a safe Bahamas. Start critically thinking about those things, Pastor, collectively, the pastors in the room. And when you start to frame this like that, you can get a different outcome. Because we're not fighting against the government. We're not trying to pull down the prime minister. That's not our role. Because you're one party or the next party. The guns don't know the difference between your party or your party. I don't know what parties you have here, whether it's red, green, blue, whatever color that you wear. But the gun doesn't have, it's not going, that violence doesn't, it's going to come to you. And I guarantee you, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, that you will see the communities that are receiving the biggest reduction in gun violence is the elected officials and the faith leaders who are coming together to work on this together. You cannot do it apart. Cannot do it apart. So here's what I want to leave you with. You have this paper. It gives you an accountability partner in this room today. So you have to find someone before we end. And you're going to write the name, the phone number, and the email address. And you're going to be in touch with that person once a month or twice a month. They're going to be your accountability partner. They're going to be working with you that says, hey, here's my plan. You're doing neighborhood watch. That's all we need him to come to the table with. We don't need him to solve all the problems in the Bahamas. All we need him to do is deal with him. That's all we want him to do. Find some, you have a 501c3? You have an NGO? It's like your nonprofit, you're the president. Could you receive funding from the government? Do you receive funding for the government? Okay, good. So you're on your way. Slowly. Okay, good. So we need to be advocating for them. That's the work that we need to be doing. Saying, yeah, give the brother, get some staff. Because he's neighborhood watch. You're negotiating. You're working as faith leaders. You are the Nehemiah on the wall. You have the Bible in one hand, but you have the hammer in one hand. You're building and you're preaching. You're working and you're preaching. And you can't come down off the wall. Huh? He's on the wall. The foundation's already laid. He's building up higher. The sermon last night was, yes, and I'm sorry that the presentation was not your typical presentation. This, as faith leaders and as clergy and leaders in our community, we're here to spur, we're here to push, and also to the government officials so that they can hear that you come with something different. We're here to make their job easier. We're not here to come against them and have rallies and fight with them. No, we're saying, let's work together to create a safe community, and you can take credit for that. In your campaign speech and whatever else, you do whatever you want with that. And you do what you need to do with the information that you have. We're here to support them. They're the ones that lead, and God says that those are in the authority of that, we are going to pray for them. God set them up in that position. God put Prime Minister Davis in the right place at the right time. He's the right man for this job right now. Whether you vote for him or not, he is the right man for the job. So you got to go to him. Your representative from the area, have him come to your meeting. Got a folks around every month. Every month, that's number one. Every month, have a meeting on this. Every month. And invite them every month. You ready for that plan or what? You need some other help? That's the name. You're gonna need some help. Yes, and then we're gonna close. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Aaron, other leaders,
Mm-hmm.
the partner, government, or government schedule policy. All partners. Or fin- bu- budget,
Mm-hmm.
all that.
Right. Huh. But okay. All right. So let me give some political advice now in terms of that part. And I said this to the mayor all the time. As I said to you, as the advisor to the mayor, um, I always say to him, you have to share the burden and the blessing. So here's where we go. Okay. Take, for instance, you have a problem of gun violence. The prime minister and his team alone should not be facing the country and saying that they have a problem. The prime minister should be having the faith leaders sharing the burden of the problem, and they have to be saying, we have a problem and we have to fix this. Okay? So the prime minister has to share the burden with them. Okay? Here is this. He also have to share the blessing with them. So because he can't get away. When there's a serious shooting and stuff happening, he needs to call all of the wise men of the Bahamas together and say, we have a problem, we're standing together, and we are sharing the burden of Bahamas together. And we all lined up. However, when he leaves there and he goes into his budgetary meeting, you have to be okay. Now, how do I share the blessing with those who's carrying the burden with me? Because what happens, we call it rent-a-collar in the States. In other words, they rent the collar just for the good things and then they leave. We don't want no rent-a-collars. No. We're not renting anything. This is not a rental car. So I know, as a prime minister, there's things happening or whoever, elected leader in this area, I am saying, no, we're together. Because you can't give the burden only to elected officials. It's our community. So if we're going to share the burden together, we also have to share the blessings together. So yeah, so we're going to do that together. And when you do that, you know, you're coming from a place of honesty. And God is going to bless your country for working in honesty with the faith leaders of the country. As difficult as it is, what the scripture that I read this morning, 2 Corinthians chapter 4, he said, even though you are downcast and perplexed, you can't give up because we are hope dealers. We are the hope that we need. You are the hope. We are hope dealers. And push them till they don't want to be pushed anymore. Push them until they come to their very knees. Push them until the conscience beat them at night. that they do the right thing for you and your community. And don't give up. Now, it's not politics. We're not doing that. We are pressing them to do what's right by our community. All right, the MP will have the last word.
Consult with major issues, policies that pass in this country. I know this present prime minister meets once a quarter. But I don't know if any clergyman in here have ever been to that meeting. They normally go to Faith
Yeah.
United and they have lunch.
Second, sir. Our host pastor is not invited to those meetings. I would like to suggest, just a suggestion, 'cause I'm not from here. If it is possible that he can be invited to the next one.
That's no problem. I have no problem because his father
Huh?
was very much involved in those meetings in the past, and he could
Yeah.
attest to that.
So,
So again, but I just wanted to put that on record that the government always works closely with clergymen in this country before they proceed with anything. Now, when you said they have to be blessed, there has to be blessing, which is true.
Sure.
And that budget is not allocated in one government ministry. It is spread over various government ministries, as I said before. Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture has to play their part.
yes,
The youth organization in place. Social service has to play its part. National
And-
security has to play its part.
Great.
Also, I just think that more pastors need to get involved or find a way. I will do my best to get my pastor in my community involved. But that does happen on a regular basis where the government meets with clergymen, get advice, and sometimes they get pushed back. You know, and the clergyman gives their advice, and then we proceed with it. Because I've sit in those meetings myself.
and we thank you for coming. You had the courage, and the brother in the back who represent this area, you had the courage to be here. You didn't ask about how many people was here. You came. And so we should be making sure that you remember those individuals and you stand around them and you upgrade them. So whatever time come around, you have to say, okay, we were here at the church, we had a small meeting, this was the first one, but he came. What's your name, MP? In the back, in the black? Oh, you there? What's your position and title? He's the aide. Oh, you're the big guy, so he's coming behind. Okay. All right. So here we go. Now, give him a check. You understand? Everybody, give him a check. He legit. He's in the mix. So now he know all of this. He have no excuse not to support what we're supposed to be doing. Because he was here. You're moving. Exactly. So he's in a blessing and he's in a burden. All right. So tonight, when you come, Dr. Galbraith is going to take us to the preaching and teaching, along with he's gonna be the soup master. He's gonna mix what you call, I don't know if you all know this, but it's called a bouillon. A bouillon is a it's a soup. It's you put everything, all of the scraps that you have, you put it into one thing. It's like a one pot, and you mix it up. He's gonna create a bouillon tonight for us. All right, when you come back, and no, everybody, it's open. It's like a service, right? Yeah, tonight. Listen, thank you all so much. God bless you all. We appreciate you. There's two things that I want to note. March 27th, I'll be on St. Croix, at Government House, doing a presentation for nonprofits. I'm going back to my hometown. I was born there, raised there. And then Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, April the 1st, we're doing something with a theological seminary where for the first time that we're putting all of the stuff that we're doing through the academia lens of the work that we're doing. So that'll be April the 1st to the 3rd in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So we have Belize soon. We have Atlanta. We have Milwaukee. We're going back to St. Lucia. And so wherever they call us, that's where we're going to be able to upgrade faith leaders in their community. So blessings to all, and thank you again.
Before we exit out, we'll ask for two things. We're going to close in prayer, but after we close in prayer, we'll ask for a picture together as we share in this moment. We can put our hands together and thank God for Pastor Guilford Monroe's and his lived and learned expertise to be able to share within the work that's being done, not just here, but all around the world. Would you join with me in prayer? And if you feel comfortable, could you stand all over this place as we go before our God? God, we thank you even this afternoon that your word declares we're hard pressed on every side, but we are not destroyed. Downcast, but not in despair. God, we recognize the challenge is great before us, but we also know you are also greater than whatever is in front of us. We declare that if God be for us, who can be against us? We ask even in this afternoon that the information, the insight, the direction we've received, God, we would not only process, we would not only pray, but God, we would plan and then put our plan into action as we seek for the end of violence, gun violence, not only here in the Bahamas, Father God, but also all over the Caribbean and in New York. God, we recognize the task before us, but we also know you are God who is with us. So guide us, direct us, strengthen us, oh God. We pray, oh God, we would not get weary in well-doing, for in due season we'll reap if we faint not. We ask for your protection, your providing, Father God, your provision and your prevention concerning our lives. Cover us. I ask for everyone who is gathered here, who sacrifice of their time, their energy, and effort. God, you would repay it unto them, oh God. That you, Father God, they would owe, you said you would owe no man nothing. So God, would you redeem their time? Father God, let it be put into action. And God, it is our prayer that the young men and young women of this great nation would, oh God, be saved physically, emotionally, and spiritually. We pray, oh God, against this scourge of violence, these over 100 individuals who lost their lives concerning it. God, we mourn, we weep, but God, now we're going to work. God, we thank you, oh God, that as we put our hands to the plow, we will not turn back, but God, will see your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Cover us and keep us even on this afternoon. We ask these things now in the powerful and mighty name of Jesus Christ. We do declare the people of God who believe and trust God said, amen, amen, and amen. Just briefly, if you could come to the front as we take a group photo. We want to tell God thank you for Pastor Nathan Wells, for your generosity, for you opening up this space, as well as for your leadership here in this community, as well as beyond. We want to also thank God for our elected official who is here on today for your leadership, your interaction.